Welcome to the Fabulous 413. I'm Khalees Smith.
And I'm Monte Belmonte.
Later in the show, we'll speak with Representative Jim McGovern about protecting trans kids, gun safety, and why he is driving his father's Jeep. And we'll be joined by some of the cast of Shout, Elevate, Inspire, who take the stage at Springfield Technical Community College this weekend and learn more about FirstGen and the Performance Project, the organization's bringing all those folks together.
Today is April 20th. 420 in the 413, and everywhere it is an unofficial but widely recognized cannabis holiday. Before we introduce our special guest, I thought I would share this piece of history from Time magazine written by Olivia B. Waxman. Some say 420 is code among police officers for marijuana smoking in progress. Some cite Bob Dylan's song Rainy Day Women number 12 and 35 because 12 multiplied by 35 equals 420. But to put it bluntly, those rumors of the history behind how April 20th and 420 got associated with marijuana are false.
The most credible story traces 420 to Marin County, California. In 1971, 5 students at San Rafael High School would meet at 4:20 p.m. by the campus's statue of chemist Louis Pasteur to partake. They chose that specific time because extracurricular activities had usually ended by then. This group, including a man named David Reddix, became known as the Waldos because they met at a wall. Were so creative.
I know,
they
right?
would say 420 to each other as code for marijuana.
Later, Reddix's brother helped him get work with Grateful Dead bassist Phil Lesh as a roadie, so the band is said to have helped popularize the term 420. On December 28, 1990, a group of Deadheads in Oakland handed out flyers that invited people to smoke 420 on April 20th at 4:20 p.m.
One ended up with Steve Bloom, a former reporter for High Times magazine and authority on cannabis culture. The magazine printed the flyer in 1991 and continued to reference the numbers. Soon it became known worldwide as a code for marijuana. And in 1998, the outlet acknowledged that the Waldos were the inventors of 420.
All that from Time magazine. And joining us this 420 from our very own 413 is Springfield's own Payton Shubrick, owner of Bricks Cannabis in Springfield, right around the corner from the NEPM studios, one of only 3 black female-owned pot shops in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So Bricks is not just female-owned, it's family-owned. Like, your family is on the board for Bricks. How did that come about?
Yeah, it's actually an interesting story. So a little bit about myself. Growing up here in the city of Springfield, I was in a dry household. There was no smoking. There was no drinking. It was a focus on water and athletics. And so after completing undergraduate at College of the Holy Cross.
Where you played what sport?
Where I ran track and
Nice.
field. The 400, I remember it vividly. It's hard to forget that race. The voters voted to legalize in 2016. And so I had the hard task of telling my parents, who at the time thought I was going to go to law school, that I instead wanted to be a legal drug dealer. That's quite frankly how I put it. And that was important simply because I knew that if I was going to go into this space of cannabis, which was and still is primarily white male owned and operated, that I would need the support of my family. And so for me to even consider this, I needed them to agree to help. And so Bricks is a play on the last name Shubrick, 6 people in my immediate family. My father, my mother, and my sister all participate day in and day out. For those listening, yes, that means I manage my parents, and that's an interesting dynamic, right? Talk about Christmas getting interesting, right? But it's been a journey, and one
I saw those numbers. This all you got me?
Yeah, exactly. Quite literally. And it's like, we're going to talk to HR about that on Monday.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a great experience of being able to bring together the aspects that are really important to me, like family, like access to cannabis so that it can be a part of an individual's wellness routine, and having the support of my family to make that dream now a reality.
I think it's also really important, like, not only is it, like, black-owned, it's female-owned, but, like, it's local-owned, too. Like, that's another problem I see in the cannabis industry from the outside in. Like, there's a lot of outside folks coming in to start businesses here, but it's also really important to have folks from here starting those same businesses and reinvesting it in the community.
Oh, most certainly. So you do have, as you described, a lot of multi-state operators that have had success in other states that legalized prior to Massachusetts that come in my opinion, do a rinse and repeat model of what they found successful in those other states. The problem is it doesn't actually engage the community in a meaningful way. And so for me, Six Bricks becomes extremely important to the community because it acknowledges the checkered history, right? Because cannabis was not always legal. So what did it do to a community like Springfield? And at the same time, it allows me to consider, with the disposable income a lot of our residents have, how do they get to make a legal purchase and feel good about it and not be reduced down to the things that are going to be $8 or $4 and less than ideal in terms of what they're looking to achieve in their cannabis experience.
We're speaking with Payton Shubrick, the owner of Six Bricks Cannabis, right around the corner from these studios here in Springfield. Springfield born and bred. And you mentioned that you were in a dry household and that you had to tell your family that you're not going to be a lawyer, but you're going to go into the world of cannabis. Now they're all a part of it. Was there a long process to bring them on board to being a part of it? And is cannabis, if coming from a dry household, now a part of your own repertoire, personal lives?
Great question. So I would say the hardest person to get on board, in full transparency, was my father. I mean, I remember to this day telling him I'm not going to law school. Now, to paint the picture for all the parents listening, he had paid for me to, one, take the LSAT prep course, as well as take the test. So imagine his surprise, right? You go that far in the journey, and you're just like, I'm going to change my mind, right? So it took him probably a few weeks to really wrap his mind around it. I still remember saying, like, I don't want to go to law school. I want to legally sell cannabis. And he's like, when did you start smoking cannabis, right? That was the first response.
Right.
And it was informing him, no, I don't smoke, but I acknowledge it's going to happen here in Springfield, whether we want it to or not. And I think I can do a better job of having a business model in this space than the many operators I'm seeing kind of swarm around the city of Springfield. So once he got involved and was on board, it was kind of full steam ahead. And that's really where the learning journey for all of us started in the family, to understand what cannabis actually is. What is CBD versus THC? How can it be a part of your wellness routine? And there was a lot of myths that we were believing at the time, right? You know, it was the understanding you get high and then you're on the couch eating Cheetos for hours on end, and you see the cheeseburger in the corner doing yoga because, you know, you're on this trip.
All of which can happen, but doesn't have to happen every time.
Everybody's experience is different.
Most certainly. So it's understanding what was our experience going to look like and taking safe and calculated risks and exploring what cannabis usage could look like for us each individually, while also at the same time as a collective, and how that would feed into our business model.
I was saying off the air how I came from trying to hide it from my parents as a child to now that my parents' generation going to places like Six Bricks and trying to work with the bud tender about it as wellness, as about, you know, trying to find healthy ways of using this substance that was controlled for a while. So it's really like, it's mind-boggling to think back just, you know, that few decades ago, how far it's come. And we're speaking with Payton Shubrick from Six Bricks Cannabis in Springfield. We've got a lot more questions for you, but one of the most important things that I think you're doing, and you referenced this before about the impact that you knew marijuana, cannabis was having in the city of Springfield in regards to the legal system, and then kind of coming in when it becomes legal and owning your own city and the cannabis usage in that city. You're working with an expungement clinic to try to deal with the previous repercussions of what went on for cannabis possession and sales. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, most certainly. So part of what really drove me to be a part of this industry was acknowledging I went to a public high school. I knew the kids who sold the dime bags, and looking at the trajectory of our lives, right? The ways in which that they were then able to progress or not progress because then they were arrested. Their lives were forever changed. And now you have that same plant being legalized, and on those same corners now being sold, and nobody's talking about the wealth gap, the disparities in communities like Springfield. And so for me, it was really considering if we're going to have a business model in the space, we cannot be tone deaf to the reality of what was happening in this community prior to that legalization. So if you look at the physical layout of the store, we have a timeline on the history of cannabis talking about the war on drugs. If you look at our word cloud wall, we're not just calling it cannabis, because when I grew up, it was pot and it was broccoli. And if you had the foreign exchange student talk to you, it was diggity dank, right? So including all these aspects.
Tell me more.
Yeah.
No, I love these.
Yes. But the expungement clinic really was an opportunity to more formally acknowledge that. We worked with community legal aid and many sponsors, being Local Roots, Safetiva Labs, Tree Works, and we wanted an opportunity for those that had a conviction related to cannabis or a nonviolent crime to have an opportunity at a fresh start. So we were able to host it on our site this past Sunday and help the community free of charge simply say, we acknowledge that you buying cannabis today might be a great experience, but you may have also had a history with a less than ideal experience, and how can we right that wrong? So in many ways, restorative justice for a community that really does deserve it.
I think that ties into some of the state's attempt at a social equity program where the cannabis industry is considered, like, we've got one, and I do believe it's modeled on what's happening in Oakland in general. But can we talk about, like, just the pros and cons of it? Because on the whole, like, it's a good and very necessary program. But when I look at it, I maybe see some holes towards the end. Again, one of those ledges that you reach where, like, you've got all this support, and then you hit a certain line and then there's nothing. The floor just drops out.
Oh, most certainly. I describe the social equity program at a best attempt to get those that have prior convictions in cannabis, people of color, those who are living in areas of disproportionate impact involved in the legal market. However, it's the equivalent of learning all the games of Monopoly and not being given the cash to actually play the game. And so when you think about cannabis, you have to remember that there are many barriers to entry, but the biggest is capital. When on average you're spending $1.5 million for a retail license, and that's all in to go through licensure, to build out your space, to hire folks, to buy product, to cut a ribbon and open doors. Coming from a community like Springfield, how many people do you know that you could simply say, hey, I need 1.5, can you write that check?
I need to know more of those people.
Yeah, me too.
Well, I think we all do, right? And so when you think about that, the social equity program did a really good job of showing people how to navigate the process for licensure, but where it fell short is it didn't provide them with the capital they needed. So unfortunately, you still have a lot of folks who went through that program and fell prey to predatory lending, because then you had multi-state operators who were very interested in working with them, and I'm using air quotes, but simply wanted to eat away at their equity and take over their business model. So the social equity program, while it was a great attempt, still has a lot of work to do. There has been a social equity fund that has since been started, but none of those funds have been given out to any candidates yet.
Coming up, more with Payton Shubrick from Bricks Cannabis in Springfield. Later, a preview of Shout, Elevate, Inspire at Stick and McGoverning with McGovern. I'm going to ask Payton if there is something in their deli-style motif that they've got going on today that can help me not see how the universe unfolds in a terrifying way. You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on New England Public Media.
Making scenes. Here come the police. They know about you.
Welcome back to the Fabulous 413. It's 420 in the 413, and everywhere else, it is the unofficial cannabis holiday. And joining us from right around the corner here in Springfield from Bricks Cannabis is Payton Shubrick, the owner of Bricks Cannabis. And we're learning about the business of cannabis as well as some of maybe the chemistry of cannabis.
And speaking of that, you referred to this before we went to break, but all over, you've got it coming up again, but what is deli style?
Great question. So deli style essentially is the opportunity for folks to see the cannabis prior to them buying it. So what happens in a retail model is everything's prepackaged. So you can learn about the strain, you can learn about the product, but you never get to visually see it. And when we think about the legacy market, one of the nice things was you could see through the dime bag and understand like, oh, that flower looks really good.
Yeah, this looks like oregano. How have I been ripped off again?
Exactly. So deli style is an opportunity for us at Six Bricks to say, we acknowledge the legacy market for the pros it has, and now we want to provide that opportunity in a legal dispensary. And so very similar like going to the deli at your local grocery store looking to get your cold cuts, you can go up and decide how many grams you want of what strain you want, and we will charge you based on the weight of that. But it provides a really nice experience for folks. We're one of only 6 groups in the state to do it, but it also acknowledges we're not tone deaf to what the community of Springfield has previously experienced and would like to see in their cannabis experience.
Right on.
So I have experimented throughout the course of my life, and I have had terrible and terrifying experiences where I see my life flash before my eyes. I understand how the entire universe fits together, and literally my childhood best friend called 911 and I woke up in an emergency room one time. If I come into Six Bricks Cannabis and say, I would like to partake.
But I don't want that to happen to me.
I don't want that to happen to me anymore.
We don't want that to happen.
You wouldn't believe how expensive an emergency room visit can be if you go in an
Yes,
ambulance.
you would. I live in America.
So is that something that you could go to Six Bricks Cannabis and find out what might work for you?
Oh, most certainly. One of the things that I truly pride myself on as we think about Six Bricks is the fact that we've taken time to really educate our bud tenders. And so bud tenders...
Which is exactly what it sounds like, right?
Yes, these are the folks tending to the buds that you want to buy. And they are well aware of cannabinoids and terpenes and many of the things that we simply haven't discussed as a society as it relates to cannabis.
What are they? What's a cannabinoid and what's a terpene?
Yes, so a terpene is really the flavor profile of the strain in which you're actually going to get hints of maybe citrus, and then you're going to align that to the effects that you're going to actually experience, where the cannabinoids really start to drill into, is it going to have more of that THC, so you're going to have more of a hallucinant, or are you going to have more of that CBD, where you're going to feel more of that body high and really have a nice experience if you're looking to relieve some pain. And so we spent about 4 weeks with our staff just educating them on the science of it, but we took it a step further as well in that we host Wellness Wednesdays with Azalia Education, a group of women that are former registered nurses that believe cannabis can be a part of an individual's wellness routine. And so we really tried to cover our front and back and side as we think about cannabis and wanting folks to feel confident in the purchases that they were making, but also not make it transactional. So we don't ask you, what do you want to buy today? How do you want to feel today, right? That's a good place to start the conversation so that we can make a more informed recommendation.
You've had a whole week of things going on at the store leading up to 420, and I know this is the last day. We got you on the last day, the most important. But what are some of the other things that you did this week to get geared up for 420?
Yeah, so we had the 413 kick it off on April 13th. Being born and raised here in the city of Springfield, have extreme pride in that. And that was really us saying that we acknowledge 420 is important, but being from the 413 is important to us as well. So we kicked it off with Thirsty Thursdays and getting folks exposure to some different beverage options.
Because there are cannabis-infused beverages, too. If you don't want to smoke it, if you don't want to take a gummy, yeah.
Yes, and it's not all seltzer, folks. We do have sodas. We have sodas and beverage enhancers as well. So we kicked it off there, and we had a different theme every day, Flower Friday, really getting folks exposure to different strains. And with that, also providing diversity of price point, acknowledging acknowledging there's nothing more disappointing than spending $60 on an eighth only to realize you don't even like it. I don't know about you all. I don't like spending $2 on something I don't like. I start to have that buyer's remorse. So each day was something different. We had our expungement clinic, in which we also included 2 food trucks, being Fish Grease from the city of Springfield, some really awesome fried seafood options, and then Crave from Holyoke was kind enough to come over
Crave
as
is
well.
Great
Tacos.
Shout out to their mofongo.
Yes, most certainly. So it was a wonderful lead up to today, and a lot of what we're doing is going to carry through the weekend. And so definitely pay us a visit, if not today, at some point this weekend. A lot of great things happening in store.
Fantastic.
Payton Shubrick from Bricks Cannabis on this 420. Is there truth to the indica couch? I forget what the sativa part of that is. Like, there are different strains, right? And so the one of them is supposed to be like you're going to be totally vegged out.
Yes.
And the other one, I can't remember what it is. The sativa has some fancy schmancy rhyming thing with it too. But.
Yeah, most certainly. So as you think about the strains, there are 3 different categories in which they can fall. Indica, couch, that's going to be more of your relaxing, calmer, helping with sleep, so on and so forth. You then have a hybrid, which is a mixture of that indica sativa, which means that you'll probably start feeling good, maybe a little giggly, laughing, feeling uplifted, and then easing into a nice, almost, I won't say couch locked feeling, but more of that relaxing, like it'd be great to take a nap, right? And sativa's the other one that you were thinking of, and that's definitely more of that uplifting, energizing, I'm gonna get focused and plow through 100 emails, if you will.
Oh. That's not what happened to me.
Well, you didn't shop at Six Bricks,
I know.
so I mean...
Yes. No, I did not.
You can fix it.
What do you think the future holds for the cannabis industry? Because we've already started to see, with like Northampton in particular, had like the highest per capita number of cannabis shops in the entire Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Some of them have started to close. East Hampton has already lost one. Is this going to self-regulate? Does it need regulation like the city of Northampton was proposing to put a cap on number of pot shops? What's your take as a cannabis business owner on the future of this business, even though it's still in its infancy here in the Commonwealth?
Yeah, most certainly. I think that we're now at a point in the industry where it's no longer build it and they will come. Many operators came to the state simply saying, if I open a dispensary here, I'm going to generate X amount of dollars. What they didn't take into consideration, and what you've pointed out, is that oversaturation. So the reality is that consumers are in a position to demand more from their dispensaries in terms of the customer experience, in terms of the quality of products, and really have the purchasing power to decide who stays in business and who doesn't. I do think that at this point, we're going to see more groups, unfortunately, drop out just because they don't have enough folks walking through the door. But at the same time, I think it's a needed part of the industry, because if you're not providing great customer service, if you're not helping folks find products that are going to actually work for them, then it's a lazy business model. And if you were in that same mindset in owning a pizza shop, you wouldn't exist past 3 months anyway, right? And so I think we're starting to see that natural selection starting to occur, where groups that don't have a strong business model, have no strategies, no plan for marketing, are not going to exist. Now, at the same time, I welcome that as someone who's been very intentional about their business model and wanting to provide top-tier service to our customers. I don't think at this point we need over-regulation, but it is figuring out what's the competitive advantage that Six Bricks has over our competitors. What do we do really well in amplifying that will carry us? And the groups that can't figure it out, unfortunately, won't survive.
It seems like one of those tenets of the business model that may be lost on people coming from outside the state is how important it is to have a strong tenet of community involvement with what you are offering and who comes in your door, making sure you're still having that connection with wherever you are. It can't just be about the strains. It has to be about the people as well, because otherwise, why are we doing this?
Oh, most certainly. I mean, our tagline at Six Bricks is people, plant, and purpose.
I was going to bring it up because it's on
We
your
see
shirt.
it on your sweatshirt.
Yeah. Oh, yes, most certainly. And I mean, it was really just simplifying. What are the 3 things that are most important to us and aligning to that? I mean, having an expungement clinic. We're one of 3 groups that have done so in the state of Massachusetts. And yet when you think about the millions of dollars, right, billions of dollars being made in this industry, and the fact that many folks aren't able to legally participate because they have a prior, because there's not more groups doing more to right the wrongs prior to a legalization, it does showcase just the further divide as we're seeing it and experiencing it firsthand. But at Six Bricks, you can't miss the fact that we're from Springfield. It's on the walls quite a bit. We pay homage to the city of Springfield in more ways than one, and it's something I'm extremely proud of.
Payton Shubrick from Six Bricks Cannabis right here in Springfield, right around the corner. Thank you so much for spending some of your busiest holiday with us here in the 413. We hope to have you back more to hear more about equity in the cannabis industry and more about what you've got going there at Six Bricks. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It was a pleasure.
Coming up, McGoverning with McGovern. You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on NEPM. Time for our weekly check-in with U.S. Congressman from the 2nd Congressional District of Massachusetts, U.S. Congressman Jim McGovern. McGoverning with McGovern. You can always send a question for the Congressman at thefab413 at nepm.org or text us 1-800-639-9120 like Andrea Liebson from Deerfield, Mass. did. She asks you, Congressman, please ask Jim what American citizens can do to end gun violence in light of the fact that Congress refuses to take action. I'm sick of the thoughts and prayers comments from national leaders. If we can build a fence on the French King Bridge to protect the handful of suicide attempts from happening, we can do something to stop the slaughter of our children and diminution of safe activities in our communities. She wants to know what you have on this. And this comes, of course, where there's a mass shooting virtually every day or more than one mass shooting every day. I think there were 5 on Sunday or something along those lines. Any thoughts in regards to Andrea's question?
No, Andrea is, she raises an important issue, and that is, gun violence is now the number one killer of kids in our country. And the federal government, by that I mean the Congress, is not doing a damn thing. And we have filibuster issues in the Senate, and we have a Republican majority in the House who won't even let us bring anything to the floor. Doesn't matter what it is. If it's anything to do with gun control, they are blocking it. And we had a bill on the floor this week because they decided their latest attack was going to be aimed at trans individuals, and they were talking about trans girls in sports. And it's just the most ridiculous thing in the world, but trying to, again, create a wedge issue here in this country and saying they want to protect kids. Well, if you want to protect kids, you ought to do something about gun violence. It is astounding. And it's not even monthly, it's not even weekly, as you pointed out, it's daily. So we are trying. We are using every procedural motion and move that we have available to us to try to bring something to the floor to force a vote. We're going to continue to do that, and we're going to continue to speak out. In fact, when I'm finished with you, I'm going to a gun violence prevention task force meeting to talk specifically about other concrete actions we might take.
More to Andrea's point, and you posted an article from the Boston Globe that's saying that there were 7 steps to get to gun safety. If all the states adopted Massachusetts gun laws, this Boston Globe estimates you could save 27,000 American lives. Are there effective local things that the federal government aside have been effective that you've seen in local communities or state to state?
Well, we have one of the lowest rates of gun violence, if not the lowest of any state in the country. So, we're doing something right here. But understand this: you don't have to check in with anybody when you cross into Massachusetts or any other state. So, unless we all do it, then we all become vulnerable to potential gun violence, where weapons of war, weapons that are used on the battlefield, can be purchased and used to hunt down civilians, and that's what we're seeing right now. And in a lot of states, they're going in the opposite direction, where they're not requiring, people to have permits, where they're not requiring people to have any training. This is insane. I think it demonstrates the power of the gun lobby in terms of filling up the campaign war chest of members of Congress and buying, their silence on this issue. And that silence is complicity, and those people who are blocking gun control legislation, who are voting against gun control legislation, they're taking blood money. and they are responsible. They are now responsible. This is not just a problem with the NRA. It is those politicians at the state and at the federal level who go along to get along and make believe like nothing's happening. I mean, I'm afraid when my kids go to a sporting event or a concert, or I mean, there was people were gunned down at a Sweet 16 party. I mean, there's no end to where this violence may occur, and it just has to stop. And people, not just Democrats and not just independents, but Republicans, who I know care about their kids just as much as I do, have to have the backbone and say enough is enough.
Meanwhile, you alluded to this a little bit earlier. H.R. 734 is being considered in the House of Representatives. It's called the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act. It would mandate that, quote, sex in the athletic context must be recognized based only on a person's reproductive biology and genetics at birth. You gave a very fiery speech on the floor of the House about protecting trans kids, and then posted that on Twitter, and there were close to 1,000 comments about that.
Mr. Speaker, our Rules Committee meeting last night was an embarrassment. Republicans went on and on about locker rooms, the same creepy stereotypes they leaned on when they tried to stop gay marriage. On and on about fairness, but no mention of the unfairness girls' sports teams face when it comes to unequal resources, unequal pay, and unequal treatment. On and on about safety, but no mention of the number one reason America's schools are unsafe, gun violence. Our kids are being slaughtered, for God's sakes. Does anybody on the other side even care? Republicans claimed trans people don't even exist, which makes me wonder why they've wasted all our time on their creepy obsession with controlling the lives of people they think aren't even real. Republicans want to ban trans kids from sports, but they won't ban child marriage in states like West Virginia and Tennessee. Enough is enough. Stop the fear-mongering.
First, let's hear your take on this bill, and then I want to run some of the critique of what your comments from Twitter by you and your response to that. So what's your take on this particular bill?
Yeah, well, first of all, I mean, I've been doing town meetings all across my district. I mean, no one raises this as an issue, number one. Number two, I'm somebody who believes that everybody ought to be respected for who they are, and that we ought to be moving in a direction away from bigotry, away from targeting people in vulnerable communities. And, you know, this is a deliberate attempt to try to create an issue where there really isn't an issue. And what they're doing is they're disparaging a community in this country. There are trans individuals who are doctors, who are lawyers, who are in high-ranking positions in government. Let's get over this. And there are a lot of young kids trying to figure out who they are, who will hear this debate and feel more isolated, you know, more depressed. Some might turn to suicide. They will be targets of more violence, more hate crimes. I mean, for God's sakes, haven't we had enough of this? And I said in the Rules Committee as they were bringing this up, I mean, the Republicans are creepy. They come up with these old arguments that they use to try to fight against gay rights and against gay marriage. And they come up with these really crazy scenarios that are just not reality. And so, look, it shouldn't be a radical idea to accept people for who they are, to love people for who they are, and let's get away from this trying to stigmatize and stereotype communities, because it is so destructive, and it can cost lives.
This is particularly in regards to sports, and the Biden administration last week was proposing new regulations that would allow schools to bar transgender athletes from participating in competitive high school and college sports, but didn't want a blanket ban on athletes. And then there was some opposition on Twitter to your speech, with people posting things like, there are clear biological differences when it comes to physical activity. Sports is a physical activity. There should be separation. Other areas where there are generally no advantages or disadvantages based on gender, i.e. a desk job, is a different story, as well as you can love people, respect people, and care about people, but not always agree with them. We can do all those things and still keep the privacy of biological women intact. The voices and concerns of biological women matter as well. What's your response to those sorts of pushback on your position on H.R. 734?
First of all, this isn't a problem, all right? And, you know, let local communities and school boards and parents and coaches work all this stuff up. I mean, I love that some of the comments are saying, "Oh, you're disparaging women's sports." The bottom line is, if you want to help women's sports, let's make sure that they're funded equal to men's sports. Let's make sure the resources are there equal to men's sports. And if you're really worried about, the protection of our children, I mean, the reality is that there has been more abuse of girls in sports by coaches and by others involved with the sport. And so, I mean, I just don't get it. I trust the communities to be able to work this stuff out on their own. And I don't think the federal government should come in and blanketly say that girls cannot participate, that trans girls cannot participate in girls' sports, and if they do, we will deny them funding. I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, if you want to have a conversation about this, you want to have a debate about it, let's do that. Let's talk about this thoughtfully and reasonably. But in a number of schools across the country where trans girls are participating in girls' sports, I mean, I just haven't heard any complaints. In fact, we've had people who have come up to the Hill who have talked about how this is not a problem. The only place it's a problem is in Washington, D.C. And to the extent that people want to talk about this, that's fine. But let's be very clear about what's happening. This is not about protecting girls' sports. This is about bigotry. This is about creating a wedge issue. This is about disparaging the trans community.
Boston Globe article this week from your hometown. Worcester bans field trips to Old Sturbridge Village following state approval of a museum charter school. The article says that Worcester Public School students will no longer go on field trips to Old Sturbridge Village starting next school year, a decision district leaders made following concerns raised about the museum's financial relationship with a new charter school. What's your take on your old school district not wanting to go to that legendary field trip location, Old Sturbridge Village?
Well, look, I love Old Sturbridge Village. I mean, and this has nothing to do with Old Sturbridge Village. It has to do with the approval of another charter school in Worcester and a concern over the fact that funding will be taken away from public schools. So, look, I mean, that's a local issue, but I understand where their concerns are coming from, and I'm a believer in public education. I believe we ought to fund public education, and I believe that we ought to make our public schools as good and as great as they possibly can be. And so I think this is just this school district showing their frustration, but I hope we can find a way to work around it because, I like Sturbridge Village.
Yeah, me too. It's a good place. Last question. Politico, there's an article today about the anniversary of the Green New Deal and Senators Elizabeth Warren and Ed Markey celebrating the ideas behind the Green New Deal, but a little critique about the vehicles that you all continue to drive. Markey hits the road in a 2007 Toyota Camry hybrid. Senator Elizabeth Warren drives a Ford Escape. And then it goes on to talk about you and your car, which is your father's Jeep. Is that the vehicle that you're continuing to drive? Your dad's Jeep?
Well, my father passed away. I took over the payments on his Jeep, and when it wears out, I will move to, hopefully with my wife's approval, to an electric vehicle. But look, I mean, the notion that somehow that because we're not all on electric vehicles is somehow a statement that we're not committed to the Green New Deal is absurd. I mean, and the bottom, we have financial considerations, which is we got to. I mean, I don't have the ability right now with a daughter in college and two houses and all the stuff you got to do here to just start a whole new car purchase right now. So I will do that when it is appropriate. But in the meantime, I have some sentimental attachment to this Jeep, which is pretty good gas mileage, and and I want to keep it for as long as I can because it reminds me of my dad.
Oh man, I'm driving my dad's car too. Luckily, my dad's still with us. It's a piece of crap Nissan, but I do have a Chevy Bolt full electric car on order that I'm eagerly waiting to get because my commute from Turner's to Springfield is much longer now. So
and I'll consult with you on how much your satisfaction with that new purchase, and maybe I'll get this thing.
I'll let you take it for a test spin.
I'll try.
U.S. Congressman from the 2nd Congressional District of Massachusetts and Jeep owner Jim McGovern joins us every Thursday for McGoverning with McGovern. If you got a question for the Congressman, you can send it my way, thefab413@nepm.org, or text us anytime, 1-800-639-9120. Thanks so much, Congressman. We'll talk to you again next week.
All the best. Be safe.
Up next, a preview of Shout, Elevate, Inspire, an evening of poetry, music, and theater supporting youth voices and social justice at Springfield Technical Community College this weekend with folks from the Performance Project and FirstGen. You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on NEPM.
Welcome back to the Fabulous 413. This Saturday, Shout, Elevate, Inspire, supporting youth voices in the arts and social justice. It is a benefit concert for the Performance Project, featuring Hanif Nelson and Samira Evans, amongst others, at Springfield Technical Community College. And what the Performance Project and FirstGen do is put on these incredible performances featuring young people from our area. And from their most recent production called Mother Tongue, before we introduce you to the ensemble, we will hear a piece that FirstGen and the Performance Project has put together. It's called I Am the Voice.
Ma'abasum.
Yo soy la voz.
I am the voice.
Mimi ni sauti.
Ana salt.
Of the welcomer.
Sagad garniko.
Ya kuwakaribisha.
Min ahlan wa sahlan.
The good and the bad.
Al sayyi wal jayyid.
Mazuri na mabaya.
Ramro ya naramro.
Lo bueno y lo malo.
Peace.
Art.
Creativity.
I am the voice.
Yo soy la voz. Ma'abasum.
I am the voice.
Mimi ni sauti.
Ana salt.
The unwelcomed.
The silent.
Al-maskut.
The suppressed.
The oppressed.
The angry and the scared. The people who cross our borders.
Watu wanaopita mpaka yetu.
Those who never heard.
The voiceless.
I am the voice. The people that want change.
Las personas que quieren. Watu ambao wanahitaji mabadiliko.
Hami paribatan chahanchum.
Ana dair khiyar.
Ferocious.
The truth.
Change.
The youth. I am the voice.
Hate and love.
The people that get abandoned.
The confused.
The defenseless.
Yo soy la voz. Ma'abasum.
I am the voice.
Mimi ni sauti.
Ana salt.
Justice.
Justicia. The united.
Resistencia.
Movement.
I am the voice.
The empowered.
I am the voice.
Of my ancestors.
Ya mababu zangu.
Merapur ka bata.
I am the voice.
Yo soy la voz.
Mimi ni sauti.
Ma, Mimi, Ana, yo. I am the voice of
Nguvu.
Rua.
Sakti.
Poder.
Power.
That is 7 performers from FirstGen and the Performance Project. I want you all to introduce yourself. Tell us your name and where you're from. Let's go this way.
Hi, my name is Star and I'm from Springfield, Massachusetts.
My name is Charlotte and I'm from Holyoke.
Hello, my name is MJ and I'm from Tanzania and I live in Springfield.
Hi, my name is Manisha. I'm from Nepal.
Hi, my name is Lolly and I'm from Springfield, Massachusetts.
Hello. My name is Monte. I am from Sudan and I live in Springfield.
Hello, my name is Julita. I'm from Congo and I live in Springfield.
And that was incredible, so powerful, despite the fact that we were trying to challenge our engineer over there with all the different dynamics of the whole thing.
But that's what theater is all about.
Yeah.
It is about dynamics. It's the thing that you can see on stage this weekend at Springfield Technical.
Well, technically, they're not going to be on stage this week. They are? Oh, excellent. That's
Yeah.
great. But the whole Mother Tongue event will be happening elsewhere in May, which we'll hear a little bit. Let's introduce you to a couple of the ensemble directors here, James Arana and Julie Lichtenberg. James, where are you from?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is James Arana, and I'm originally from Central America, Belize, Honduras, Guatemala. I'm the indigenous people of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
I'm from Belize.
And where do you live now, James?
Now I live in Northampton.
Which is where I see you.
That
very
sounds
frequently.
like I'm not going to say that.
And Julie Lichtenberg, where are you from?
I'm originally from New York City, and I live in Northampton as well.
Tell us about what the Performance Project and FirstGen is.
Woo, in a nutshell.
Yes.
We are a intergenerational community that believes in nurturing and supporting its members. And so everyone in the group comes together, shares stories. We do a lot of leadership workshops, and we hold a lot of circles, story circles, and then ultimately our FirstGen members create a performance. Mother Tongue took about 14 months to create. They worked with a lot of different artists. And these first-generation members also mentor younger children at Rebecca Johnson School in our Ubuntu Arts community.
Yes, I like to say that what we do is really create the space for people to get together, listen to each other, create the supporting and nurturing and respectful space to be able to tell their stories. And we do that through a variety of different ways of creating connections.
Yeah, connection is definitely at the core of our work. And actually, if we ever are for a lack of words to really encapture what we do, Monte here shares a first-generation welcome that captures every part of what we do. I don't know if you're interested in hearing that.
I am interested
bring
in
it.
here. Come in, Monte.
Yeah.
They put you on the spot.
Yeah, right?
Thank you. Being on the spot's what it's all about. Welcome to First Generation. We are a community of many ages and ancestries who come together to create art, have fun, work hard, relax, be challenged, grow, make magic, create a safe and respectful space, feel connection, and learn to nurture and support each other. We practice leadership, claim a public voice in our communities, and send powerful messages out into the world through our performances. Welcome.
I love that.
It's a lot easier than trying to explain it.
Yeah, that said it.
And it's done in several different languages before English is spoken.
Wow, that's incredible. And so this Saturday, Shout, Elevate, Inspire at Springfield Technical Community College, 7:30 with my friend Samira Evans, who came up from New Orleans, makes her home in Vermont now, a great performer, and Hanif Nelson with a cavalcade of other folks, plus the First Generation Ensemble. And it's a benefit for your work going forward, right?
Yeah, we actually have one annual benefit a year, and it's our benefit concert. And what really is exciting about it is that we have very seasoned artists who have been performing for years, like Hanif and Samira, along with artists who have come through the Performance Project. So Finta Sidime and Ayana Burnett, a poet and a singer. Finta is also a theater artist, and they will also be performing. And then First Generation does a very short selection from Mother Tongue.
And now Mother Tongue, I was lucky enough to get to see it at the Shea Theater in Turners Falls a couple weeks ago. But if you loved that I Am the Voice piece, there are, for some people, more opportunities than others to see it. But there is an opportunity coming up pretty soon where people could see that particular piece, Mother Tongue.
Yeah, so the whole piece, Mother Tongue, is 90 minutes long, and it incorporates all the languages of the ensemble and many, many stories from their families, their countries, their cultures, as well as growing up in Springfield and Holyoke. And we're going to be bringing it to Holyoke on May 13th, Saturday, May 13th at 6 p.m. at the United Congregational Church at 300 Appleton Street. It'll be on our website, and we'll be announcing it, but it's open to the public. And then we're hoping to bring it back to Springfield again in the summer.
And we're presenting it also in Northampton High School, East Hampton High School, and other schools. And we performed it at UMass and Hampshire College.
Yes, we've been performing it a lot. When we do the school shows, we can't have the general public there. But yes, we've been bringing it to schools.
So we only have 1 minute left, but First Gen, you are all First Generation something, right? Very quickly, again, down the line, tell us what you're the first generation of as part of First Gen. Or is this too hard a question to ask? Or whoever wants to jump in, go for it in the last minute we have left.
I am the first trans woman in my generation.
In your family.
In my family's
family.
generation.
Yeah. Other First Gen people, is it? Go. All right.
I'll be the first generation to graduate from high school and going to college.
Nice.
I am the first gen of going to college of my mom and my dad.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. And a lot of people are First Gen just to this country as immigrants, as my grandparents were, or my parents are the first generation born to immigrants in this country. So it's really incredible. It's Shout, Elevate, Inspire this Saturday, April 22nd, Springfield Technical Community College, featuring Hanif Nelson and Samira Evans. And look out for Mother Tongue, where it may be near a school or a church near you.
It's going to be an incredibly powerful experience. So, yeah, get out there and see it.
Thank you so much. Tomorrow in the Fabulous 413, how close is the world to nuclear war? Northampton's Dr. Ira Helfand has been part of not one but two Nobel Peace Prize winning organizations opposing nuclear war, and has just won an award from Morehouse College. We'll learn about peace building locally and globally.
And to help us decompress from all of that heavy topic, we'll enter the Cocktail Thunderdome with Sean Bilson from Judd's in Holyoke. And it's Live Music Friday with special guest Noam Schatz and from the Lucky Shots.
Our director is twice nominated today, Tony Dunn.
Our engineer is Betsy Snail on a Rail Cordis.
Our technical team is Bart, the real news boss, Rankin.
Kara, the remapping Maven Foster, and punk rock Dubé. Musical thanks to Spouse, Happy Valley Guitar Orchestra, Rihanna, Missy Elliott, Redman and Method Man, Jay Giles Band, Afro Man, and Homebody. I'm Khalees Smith.
And I'm Monte Belmonte. See you tomorrow in the fabulous 413.